All right, so this is part 2 of the 2024 presidential debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Since the debate, the polls really haven't moved much. Kamala Harris is up 1.8 points, which in part 1 I told you that's kind of like Trump being up 3 points because of the Electoral College. So if you haven't watched part 1 yet, go ahead and check it out. Here's part 2.
Lindsay.
I want to turn to the issue of President Trump. You've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have 9th month.
Now, this is an issue that both sides demonize the other side with. And I want to make something very clear on this map. This is the elective procedure, the one where there's no medical condition, you just want to have it done. And there are states, all of the light green ones, where it is legal at any stage.
They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby.
That's not what he said. I'm going to play the clip in full context.
This is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
So this clip went viral a few years ago, but what didn't go viral was the fact that he said non-viable and severely deformed. What went viral was basically, yeah, we'll deliver the baby, then have a conversation. To be fair, he worded it horribly. I mean, it's a very sensitive issue to talk about, but he could have worded that much better. And then you have Kamala Harris on the complete opposite side saying that if Trump had his way, women would just bleed out in the parking lots, when he never said that. But he has flip-flopped on this issue quite a bit.
And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay.
So Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota. Minnesota is one of the states where there is no limit.
And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump bans that make no exception even for which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral.
And that's the issue with the pro-life movement right there. Now, the argument on the pro-life side is they're not any less of a human because they're a product of a crime. And that point doesn't really sit well with the American people, especially women.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
I agree, and even a lot of lean Republicans agree as well, which is why I think there could be middle ground on this issue. Now, you couldn't codify Roe versus Wade unless you have like a supermajority, but I think a middle ground 15 to 20 weeks, with the exceptions, could pass the Senate. Moderate Republicans have made a similar proposal and point out how it's still on par with France, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Germany, and Spain. And I don't know if anybody told them, but they have Belgium's flag sideways.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
See, this is why it's easy to fact-check Trump, because he says things like everybody. All you have to do is find one case of somebody who didn't want overturn Roe versus Wade, and that would fact-check him.
No, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if you did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And
she didn't answer it directly, but if Roe versus Wade was federal law, all of these green states would become light blue. But so wouldn't the black. That's what she's going for.
And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF.
So, and this is just my opinion, he also needs to be a leader on these exceptions that we talked about, because there are multiple states where the exceptions that he points out is not the case.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
That was a really good question and was worded perfectly. I probably would have asked the same exact thing. But I think we already know the answer. We can't blame Biden on this one.
I've asked her, the VP today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks stemming the migration to our southern border.
The media took it a step further and called her the border czar. So when the shit hit the fan down there, they had to backtrack and delete all of their articles that called her the border czar. Now if you look it up, the media just says, she was never the border czar. But it's like, okay, we never said that she was. Biden didn't even say she was. He just said that she led the effort. The whole border czar thing was the media pushing it.
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
So this was the moment that everybody says she got underneath his skin. But it was a moment where she was avoiding the question. Everybody's seeing this thing as like an epic moment for her, but she was avoiding a question. The executive branch does not need permission from Congress to secure the southern border. That's just not a thing. Biden said so himself. This was not the gotcha moment the Democrats say it is. She actually sounds like Trump, avoiding a question. Look at her rallies. Her rallies are terrible.
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
This is where the moderator should have just said, no, I'm asking about the border, not his rallies.
And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires.
That's not true at all. Both sides say the same exact thing about each other, and I defend both sides when they say that. He definitely talks about those things, and so doesn't the Democrats. Whether either side actually means it is a whole other story.
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
See, now this is where the Republicans say, kind of feels like 3-on-1, because he wasn't like, no, I asked about the border. He let her deflect for 2 solid minutes, and then followed up on her deflection by asking Trump about it. That bill would have helped a little bit, and it's way too little, way too late. But it is 1,000% true that they were working on it, they were making grounds, it looked like the bill was going to pass, and then Trump did that. He made the call and say, no, let's not do this. And shame on the spineless senators for actually listening to him and walking away from it.
Let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there.
Well, I mean, she would be bussing her staff in and paying her staff, but as far as the people attending, no, that's not the case.
And then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about.
And we end with more Kamala faces. This is actually an interrogation tactic. It's supposed to throw your opponent off, but it looks very, very, very silly when it doesn't work. These screenshots were taken within 6 seconds of each other. And like I said in part 1, it's clearly a debate tactic. And it's also go out there and get some memes. We need memes. The people love memes. Make a funny face at him. All right, so this concludes part 2. Don't worry, we're almost to they're eating the dogs.